Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So revisiting this piece I mentioned the other day, Amy, from a Fenwick social studies teacher, Fenwick High School. In loco parentis does not mean crazy parents. It's just as funny the first time. You get it
Right.
now? No, the Latin.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. I learned a lot that day.
Well, it's an excellent piece. It deserves more attention than it was otherwise likely to get just by being on the Fenwick blog. So we decided to enlist Gerald Lordan, I guess Dr. Gerald Lordan, to join us to distill some of what he had to say, which I found very compelling. And so we're pleased to be joined by Gerald Lordan. Now, Mr. Lordan, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, Dan, thank you. I'm flattered you'd have me.
Well, first question, how is it you were unable to get a job at Bennett?
How was I able to get a job at Fenwick?
How you were unable to get a job at Bennett Academy, and you had to settle for Fenwick.
I never applied to Bennett.
Oh,
Thanks,
I see.
I appreciate the offer.
I see, all right. Okay, and a serious note, in loco parentis does not mean crazy parents. The thrust of the piece is talking about the contract that the teacher has with the parent, particularly in a parochial setting. Could you explain that for us?
Sure, absolutely. You know, in public education, the legal status between the school and the family would be in loco parentis. The school acts in the place of the family, and the school has the authority to do several things if the parents are not present. However, in a private school setting, 90% of the students enrolled in school in the United States are in public schools. 10% are in private schools. And in private schools, it's a different legal relationship. The school is a contractual partner with the parent. We don't act in the place of the parents. We have the authority to do those things the parents contractually agree to allow us to do.
All right, so what is the contract? Is there a contract actually signed between the parents and the teachers in the school before the school year begins?
That's a very good question. No, typically the parents have to sign a statement that they have read the parent-student handbook, and they agree to the conditions stipulated in the parent-student handbook.
And so how does that manifest itself, the difference in the relationship between teacher and parent at a school like Fenwick as compared to Oak Park River Forest?
Well, I would think the biggest difference is that the parent remains the primary educator for the child. And the school is not acting in place of the parents, but rather as a partner with the parents.
And I just had to sign a code of conduct for CPS, and we had, shared values of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate in school.
Yeah, but
it's not a religious tone.
Well,
still,
but also at Fenwick, it's a little bit more detailed than just don't stab your classmates.
It does say that. Honestly,
CPS,
it says you can
CPS. It gets a little bit beyond that, I think, to values. In addition to "Thou shalt not murder my classmate." Is that right, Mr. Lordan? Am I warm there?
Well, I would say there are probably more behaviors identified inside the parent-student handbook of a private school than there are in a public school. But I got to say to you guys, I'm not an attorney. I'm an educational philosopher. So we're going to talk about a lot of fine legal points. You're taking me out of my comfort.
No. I mean, CPS. What does that have to do with the legality of anything? No, I want to talk about education philosophy because it seems to me there is a very different philosophy at places like Fenwick and Bennett and Northridge Prep, which we were just talking about, and other schools, and even secular schools that are private, versus the zeitgeist of the day at public schools. And part of that is the relationship that you're describing, and I think part of that is also reflected in the curriculum. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
Oh, please, I would. I'd be pleased to do so. Every high school in the United States has a legal obligation to the state legislature, which charters that high school, to do two things: to train patriotic citizens in literate Americans. The only subject that every student in every high school in every state must pass to get a high school diploma is United States history. And that's truly how we train patriotic citizens. But in a school like Fenwick, we have a moral obligation to the supreme being, above and beyond our legal obligation to the state legislature. And our moral obligation to the supreme being is to train servant leaders for society. So that really impacts our curriculum. So I would think that the most important subject we teach at Fenwick is moral theology. We teach a full year of ethics to our students in their junior year. And we are the only high school in the United States sponsored by Dominican friars. And the Dominicans are the order of preachers. They're founded by St. Dominic, so they're called the Dominicans. But we have OP after our name for the order of preachers. And we were founded to improve the quality of sermons at Sunday Mass in medieval Europe. So the ability to speak in public is very important to us. So we have a mandatory speech class. All of our students take speech their sophomore year. And then, we firmly believe that the things we do inside the classroom are important, or we wouldn't do them. But equally important are the things we do inside the building, but outside of the classroom. So every month in our auditorium, we will have an all-school liturgy. And then from time to time, we'll have all-school honors assemblies. So we have the entire student body and the entire faculty together in the auditorium simultaneously. But just as important as those things are, what we do in the classroom, what we do in the building, I think the most important things our kids bring out of the Fenwick experience, they learn outside of the building. We got a group of kids leaving this morning for their Kairos retreat, Kairos. And all of our seniors take a 3-day Kairos retreat. And I think that really impacts what we do. But in addition to that, we have a mandatory 4-year foreign language requirement. Our kids all take 3 years of science. They take 4 years of math. We take seriously the affective domain.
Do you
cognitive? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Peterson, who's a University of Toronto psychology professor, talks about this as well. That the highest order in education, being a lifelong learner, yes, but being taught to reason and be able to express yourself cogently. So I want to underline the speech class, because the idea of being able to form and communicate argument, thoughtful argument, is at the core of being a self-actualized human being, but also, in this country, a civic-minded American.
Well, I would agree with that entirely. And as part of our junior year in moral theology, the kids also study logic. And I think that's really helpful to kids as they go on in life, being able to identify logical fallacies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And with respect to, the 4 years of foreign language and the science, right, there's a lot of good schools that, have those same requirements, and they have talented educators that are experts in their fields and do a good job imparting knowledge into the kids. But it seems to me the difference maker, and it certainly was for me, both at St. Mike's, a great school I went to, as well as Bennett, is the character development part of it that you were speaking to.
Oh, absolutely. We tell our kids that a moral person knows the difference between right and wrong and chooses to do that which is right. An immoral person, IMMORAL, knows the difference between right and wrong and chooses to do that which is wrong. But we tell them that immoral people are self-destructive, and they eventually bring themselves down. We tell our kids we're concerned about amoral people, AMORAL, who don't know the difference between right and wrong and don't care. They simply do that which is convenient. So we really oppose amorality. We want the kids to be moral.
Right, but how do you lead them to that path? Because I'm sure you have some students there that you've had to shepherd, correct?
How would you define shepherd?
I mean, convince them to live a solid life dedicated to God.
Well, I think the real formation of our values comes inside our houses. By the time we typically say, okay, the child's weaned, the child's toilet trained, the child reaches the age of reason, the child reaches puberty. By the time the children have reached puberty, a vast percentage of their personality has been formed. And they learn a great deal about their values by observing their parents. So one of the advantages we have is tremendous social capital. We can attract children from functional families, value-oriented families, who want their kids to be in an environment with other children from other value-oriented families. And so the peer group has a tremendous pressure upon the kids. James Coleman did a famous study in the 1960s out of the University of Chicago. He called it Adolescent Society. And he said that the only two things that really mattered to high school kids were rating and dating. Rating is being popular with your own gender, and dating is being popular with the opposite gender. Mm-hmm. He said the only school he studied where academics was as important as rating and dating was the only Catholic high school in his study. He was very particular not to identify the schools in the study. So I have no idea what the Catholic high school was or the public high schools. But I think that speaks to that idea of social capital. Our kids have got a real positive peer group influence on one another.
Thank God it wasn't just rating and dating for me at Bennett.
Oh yeah,
I would not have worked out well. So that's really important. One thing you talk about, the kind of the families it attracts. They want this, character-driven curriculum. They exhibit those values in their homes, and they want that to be extended at the school, as you were saying. So, how much in your time at Fenwick in Catholic education? How much have you seen it change or evolve, or is this one of those things that you can set your watch by? This is going to be the way it is, and it's not so malleable.
Okay, you're talking about the moral value set?
No, I'm not talking about moral values. I'm talking about how you educate kids. Are you educating kids any different in 2017 that you were in 2007, in 1997, and 1987?
Oh, absolutely. I think I started teaching in 1973. I've lost track of how many years I've been teaching now. But I would say this is a great deal more technology inside the classroom, and there's a great deal more emphasis on science, engineering, and mathematics. But despite that, when we talk about being a literate worker, we used to talk business math, business English, etc. Now we're talking physics, and calculus, and computer programming. But we believe that we can offer kids unchanging values in changing times. That there's a deep atavistic core desire on the part of humans to understand their place in the cosmos. And we think that logic and ethics addresses that desire on the part of the kids. So what we present inside the classroom changes, but the role modeling behavior of the faculty, we hope, is constant.
He is Dr. Gerald Lordan. He's a social studies teacher at Fenwick High School. You can check out his piece, In Loco Parentis, does not mean crazy parents, which is a good, quick read, but an important one, at the FenwickFriars.com blog. Mr. Lordan, thanks for joining us. Just one request. If you come across a young lady named Ava Thompson in your class, please...
I have not met Ava yet, but I will look for Ava.
All right. She is Sean from Elmwood Park's daughter, and I don't want you to blame Ava for the sins of her father. Just
all right.
So Ava is. Don't consider her father when you assess Ava. If you could just do that, I think most of our listeners would agree. If you're not familiar with Sean from Elmwood Park, then you should get familiar, and you would also agree.
Well, I'm sure Ava takes after her mother in art.
Exactly.
There you go.
Precisely. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. Take care of yourself. Bye now.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch.